Okay, so if you are a new homeowner and you're looking to purchase a snowblower, here's some things to consider. This was the cheapest 2-stage 24-inch snowblower that I could find. You could find cheaper ones, there's no doubt about that. There are plenty of single-stage snowblowers that have the impellers that spin like this and throw the snow out. Those are okay in certain situations if you only have a couple inches of snow or maybe you're doing a back patio. I actually tuned one of those up for my father, and you know what? That's all he uses it for, the sidewalks and the back patio. It's not great for doing the driveway because that's too much snow for it, all right? Usually if it's heavy and wet, it can't handle it. This snowblower can. Usually with a wider 24-inch and up, 2-stage snowblower, ladies and gentlemen, you can handle your driveway just fine. And especially if you live in an area that gets a lot of heavy, wet snow, definitely consider a bigger snowblower. This snowblower was $499 on Amazon. It was the cheapest one I could find, and it included free shipping. I did notice, though, that this snowblower is now on sale on Amazon for $399. I did have to pay tax on this item as well, so this was the cheapest snowblower I could find on Amazon. So with this snowblower, there is definitely going to be some assembly required here. This box, I thought, was actually kind of small, and when it was being delivered, here it is. It's 25 inches wide that way. It is almost 33 inches long, and from the ground to the top, almost 26 inches high. We got to open this bad boy up and get it put together. All right, so let's get to opening this thing. I can't believe they actually fit all this into one solid, tight little box like this. Look at this. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, so we're still unboxing this thing, and they kind of hid the chute scraper, which honestly, after doing an impeller kit, you don't even need these from what I've seen. And then it's got the crank handle right here. That was also hidden up inside this rail. All right, ladies and gentlemen, to get these bolts that are in just about every corner off of here, I'm going to use my impact driver with a 10mm on the end, and we're just gonna start taking off all of these little bolts, and this whole guy should come right off. Now, if you don't have one of these impact drivers, a normal socket set'll do, and even if you have a Phillips head, that'll get these bolts off as well. Looks like we have a mystery bag that comes with this. That was tied to the top of this metal frame here. And I'm going to show you guys a handful of little tips that I use to kind of get a brand new snowblower up and going. I did it with mine, I did it with my father's, I did it with a bunch of other people's too, and it kind of sets them up for success. Helpful little tip, save all the cardboard that you get with this thing. You'll see why later. Let's see what's in our Power Smart goodie bag here. I've never gotten a goodie bag with any snowblower I've ever purchased, but hey, that's kind of cool, you know? All right, so we have our gas cap. That's important. We're gonna set that aside. And it looks like we have all, we got our casters. Those are important too. We gotta set those up. These are our little bolts with knobs to kind of lock down our handlebars. And these are our shear pins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know what a shear pin is, these are gonna go on your augers right here. And there's a couple of them. There's one there, there's one there, one there, one there. There's 4 of them. Now, if you catch something, maybe like a big branch or something really tough inside this auger system, these shear pins will break so you don't destroy your gear case right here. So having a few extra of these is never a bad thing. All right, so in our other goodie bag, we have an instruction manual. We also have our warranty information, which comes in a variety of languages. And then we have our quick setup guide. So we're gonna be following this guide pretty much step by step to get this thing put together so that way you guys can kind of follow along. So putting this whole thing together, they actually do make this fairly straightforward. This is not too complicated. What you're gonna need first is these handlebar knobs. You're gonna wanna take all the knobs off first and loosen these up. This way it'll just go a little bit more efficiently when you get the handles up and you're trying to hold things in place. So we're just gonna undo these really quick, set these off to the side. Then if we go around to the front here, they kind of stored our chute, which is all plastic, in some heavy duty bubble wrap. And what we gotta do is now lift up our top piece and move some things around. So now, remember when I said take the knobs off? Well, here you go. So we're gonna put the knobs on the outside. We're gonna stick our bolt. We're gonna take off this curved washer here. The bolt head is also curved. We're gonna stick that through the backside, just like that, and then put the washer on that way. And let me zoom in for you. Pretty simple. So now I have not yet cut off the zip ties on this thing. I'm just kind of building it off of the frame that it's sitting on. I think it'll be easier to move this whole unit once I get the handlebars and everything kind of else put in place. Okay. So there we go. Now this little clip right here is going to be for our chute scraper. And like I said, you're probably not even gonna need this. You might even just throw this away, I don't know, but that would go right here. Pretty simple. So the instructions say the next step on here is to cut any zip ties like these free and get these out of the way. Man, they really got this stuff on good. There we go. In order to connect this chute entirely to this rod right here, what you're gonna look for in your little goodie bag where I showed you the shear pins earlier is 2 bolts. Now let me show you the differences. Here is a shear pin. It's got these little notches right here on each end. This is a regular bolt, okay? We're gonna use the regular bolt here. This is what we need. So I'm going to take the first one and we're gonna stick her in and we're gonna lock her down. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now I'm gonna get my ratchets on here and I'm gonna tighten these down momentarily. All right, so now we're gonna tighten these little bolts up here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold it down with a 10mm wrench and then use my impact driver with a 10mm socket on the other side to snug it down. You could use a ratchet set, that would work fine. That'll do. I just use this because it's quicker. And that's it. All right, so the next step is going to be installing our crank handle, which will help spin this guy left or right. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna feed it through the same mounted piece here on the handlebar set that holds our snow scraper. And there's a little hole on the backside for you to put it through. And then I'm going to stick it through right here. And then inside, I'm gonna line up our holes. Take your pin, push it through. Your holes should be all lined up at this point. And there you go. Boy, that needs some grease. Definitely needs some grease in there. Holy smokes, that is a tight turn. Next step will be hanging the chute operation cable, and this is going to allow us to pivot our snow angle up or down. And what we're going to do is we're going to hang it here on this turning rod. So we're going to hang it just like so. It'll give you this little oddly shaped pin here. We're going to hang it just like this, just like so, and it'll stay there. So our next step here is going to be getting this whole snowblower off of this metal frame that it's sitting on down below. I have to start adjusting cables and making sure the wheels spin and all this and that, so we got to start cutting loose some of these heavy-duty zip ties. So we have one in front here. Free this bad boy up. There we go. That's gone. And then we have two on the drive shafts on the back. On that, and out it comes. There we go. So the next step here is to install our casters on the bottom. Now you need these, and if you were just to go on rubbing on bare metal here, that could be a serious problem down the road. So they give you some very simple lock nuts and a simple washer. I'm sorry, a simple bolt here, and it has a square pattern. That's gonna fit in these square holes down at the bottom. So I'm first gonna stick my bolts down at the bottom. I'm gonna feed them through until the square peg fits through the square hole. Same thing on the back one. Feed it through, and then we're gonna put our caster on. Now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna put these on loosely, and then I'm gonna show you a little trick that I do, and I'll explain why I do this next step as well. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually going to set the height off of the ground to about 1/4 inch or so. And before I bolt down these casters, I have to do this. Now the reason being is I'm going to lift this up, set a pencil down on each side, just like that, and I'm gonna let it rest on those pencils that I just put in there. Now, if I didn't have this and I just kind of let this snowblower scrape along the ground, just like that, if one of these augers was to catch maybe part of a curb or the very end of the driveway where it meets the street and there's that lump at the bottom of your driveway, or something along those lines, and this catches, and you hit that hard enough with this, that could destroy the gears inside this gear case. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is a lot of work to fix that. That's not easy. So we're gonna raise this up just a little bit as a precautionary measure before we bolt down these casters on the sides. So now we're gonna bolt these down. I'm gonna use a 1/2 inch socket. I'm gonna put pressure on it from the back side. I already have those pencils still in place, so these casters are now resting flat on the ground, and all I gotta do is drive down this bolt. Just like that. Done deal. So now as we come back to the backside of this machine, we have to connect these two cables. This is the auger cable, and we have this little Z end piece, and then we have a little O ring that we gotta fit this through. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it up toward the carburetor here, push it through, and then pull it down, and it should go on with ease. And then give it a few tugs. It should be pretty tight. That should do. Now if we look here, that cable is kind of slightly at an angle, and the pulley wheel is straight up and down. What I may do here is I may try to bend this downward a little bit at a slight angle, so that way this pulley pulls a little bit more efficiently. Over here, this is the drive cable end, and what we're gonna do is, again, move it toward this pull handle right here. We're gonna get it close. I'm gonna pull down on the spring, and we're just gonna feed it through just like that. And now that's nice and tight. And as I give that a good pull, we're looking pretty good there. Okay, on to our next step. Our goal is now to fill this engine up with oil. We're gonna take our funnel, stick it in. Now, in the manual, it calls for 5W30 oil. I'm going to go ahead and use full synthetic. I found that I have better results with full synthetic oil. If you bought a quart of this, you'd probably have just enough. You might want to buy 2. All right, I'll see if I can put one in the description below. This is just some general SuperTech oil that I got at Walmart. This will do just fine for everything we're going to do here. So I'm just going to slowly start to fill this up. One thing you should take note of is you want to fill this right in the middle of this serrated area here. High, low, fill it right in the middle. Okay, let's check our oil. We should be good now. I mean, this has been filled a couple of times, and I'm surprised by how much oil this thing actually took. Yep, might be hard to tell, but it looks like we are right in the middle here. And actually, I'm gonna wipe it down. I'm gonna test it one more time, just to be on the safe side. Twist it down, let it sit for a second. Open it back up. Yep, smack dab in the middle. So now our first oil change is all set. Now what we're gonna do here is we're going to inflate our tires. We're gonna make sure they're filled up properly. These say to fill up to no more than 24 PSI. So we're gonna open up our air jet here. We're gonna hook up our air hose, and we are just slightly below 20. And that should do. And that one will do. And so now we are about to give this engine its first break-in run here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up our choke all the way. We're gonna prime this about 3 or 4 times. That'll do. And then this should be ready to get started. Let's give it a pull. So now, interesting thing with these, the way to turn them off is you actually have to unplug the key. So definitely don't want to lose that key right there, because in order to turn it off, you got to take it out and then put it back in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. This engine has officially been broken in for about 15 minutes. I'm going to take it back to the workbench. I'm going to drain oil out of it now, and I'm going to refill it. All right, so our next step now is to drain our oil. And you might be saying, well, we just filled it and we just ran it, everything's fine. Well, that is true, yes, but this engine is breaking in, and when that piston is driving up and down, initially it's going to release a lot of metallic particles into the engine oil when it's first breaking in, driving up and down. So what we're gonna do is we're going to change this oil, get rid of all those little metal particulates, and we're gonna get them out of this engine right away. And in order to do that, we have our spout right here, which sticks over the base of the snowblower, which is good, but it's tucked away behind this wheel. Now, in order to get this out efficiently without it kind of draining back and hitting the body of the snowblower, we're gonna use what's called our favorite tool here, our Form-A-Funnel. This is made by a company called Pig. I'm gonna attach a link down below in the description for one of these. These are very handy, ladies and gentlemen. I can actually shape this, I can bend it, and it stays in place. And I use this for all kinds of oil draining opportunities such as this. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to slip it in. And actually I might tighten it up first. I'm gonna slip it in here. I'm gonna tuck it right underneath the spout. That should do right about there. And now what it's gonna do is it's gonna drain directly into my oil pan down below. So this is a 10 millimeter bolt right here. We're gonna open this up, put it on our socket, just like that. Boom, out it comes. And it is draining perfectly into that pan, exactly where we want it. Cool, we'll let that be for a few minutes and we'll come back to it. Okay, so now this has been sitting for about 15 minutes or so, and all the oil has been now officially drained out. It is all in the pan down below. There's actually really nothing sitting on the forma funnel. So I'm gonna take our bolt now, we're gonna plug it back in. We'll snug it down. Use my ratchet. And that'll do. So now I'm going to carefully pull out the forma funnel. And then I'm going to slide out our oil pan, and there you go. That's that. So I'm going to clean this baby off. Notice I have a piece of cardboard on the ground, and I said earlier, save your cardboard. Well, here's why. Just in case it drips, it's not on your garage floor, it's on the cardboard. You throw the cardboard away, you recycle it, you're done. And that'll about do. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, forma funnel. Awesome, awesome tool. Definitely worth having one of these in the garage. Now, if we inspect our oil here, this is kind of has a haze to the top of it, and that's all those tiny little metaparticulates that you cannot really see. The camera really doesn't do it justice here. You have to kind of see it for yourself, but I do have a little spot there I can see, something there, something down here as well. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was definitely worth doing, I think, because you know what? It's just gonna make this engine run that much better down the road. So at this point, we're going to refill our engine oil. Okay, so I have now filled up the snowblower once again. And this thing takes a pretty good amount of oil, ladies and gentlemen. And what I'm gonna do is pull my dipstick back out. Again, I'm looking to see if the oil is in the middle of this serrated zone. And it's a little tricky to see on camera, but yes, it is. It's actually just above where it says okay on that little logo. So we are good to go. I'm gonna put that back in. And that oil change is now complete. Okay, so here's another thing I don't like about this. It has an issue turning this crank. I'm actually putting a lot of pressure on this just to get the chute to spin. And it does kind of move in this like clunk, 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 clunk pattern. And I guess that works in two ways. It kind of keeps the chute in one spot, so as it's blowing snow, it's not like moving like that. And you don't want that. So I think that's kind of why they maybe did this, but we definitely got to get some lubrication into this little gearbox here. And it's actually really simple. It's 2 gears. I'm going to take out these 2 screws. We're going to open that cover up and we're going to load it up with some marine grease. That's what we're going to do. So our step here, we're going to use our impact driver. We're going to use a Phillips screw bit. We're going to take out the 2 screws. That's 1. That's 2. And off it comes. Now, as we kind of zoom in here, I'm going to turn my crank. You can see it's very clunky. I don't really like that. I feel like that should be much, much smoother. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop some grease on this. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to throw some marine grease in here. This is from Lucas Oil Products. This is good stuff. This is not afraid of water. So I'm going to put this in here with my hands, and we're going to get it into all these little threads. And that should help lubricate this whole process. That way it's not so clunky. But I'm also going to take some of this grease and I'm going to put it down at the bottom of the chute, so that way it spins better on its base. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I have added quite a bit of that Lucas Oil marine grease there. And I'm gonna put a link in the description below. This is great stuff, ladies and gentlemen. This stuff lasts a long time and it'll do great in this little gearbox here. Let's see how it does. Let's see if it improves things. Somewhat. So now, in order to get some grease down at the base here and help it kind of spin a little bit easier on this base, what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove these two bolts because we have to pull this whole chute assembly off. I don't need to take the whole thing apart, I just need to get it up enough so that way I can get some grease there. So I'm gonna use my 10mm socket on my impact driver. We're just gonna loosen these up. Wow, I feel like that moves better already, and it's not even bolted down. Let's get to that step. That is definitely better. It's not perfect, but it is a lot better. I think it's got to do with some breaking in. I think that's all it needs now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to reinstall our cover. We're just going to simply pop this back on top. And we're going to take our screws and send them back home. That's it. Still is a little clunky, but it's definitely a lot better. So that is, ladies and gentlemen, a pro tip right there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to give you a next level tip, and this is actually kind of important, not so much right away, but more so down the road. And I think that's when you'll thank me for this, because here's the thing. Let's say you pop a tire or you have a transmission issue and you need to take the wheels off for some reason. All you do here is you open this up, you take the pin out, and then the wheels should slide right off. But if this has been through many winters, this drive shaft right here, which is metal, will be rusty and this wheel will not come off. So what we'll do is we're gonna prevent that by taking some anti-seize, and I'm gonna put a link in the description below for this. This is awesome stuff, and for about less than $10 a bottle, ladies and gentlemen, this is an awesome thing to keep in your cabinet in your garage, because you will find a million uses for this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna coat this right here. We'll slide the wheel back on, super easy. That's all you have to do. So now with the anti-seize, you definitely want to get some latex gloves on. And this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, if you get this on your fingers, it will stain for a little while. So I usually just like give it a quick mix, just like that. We're gonna coat this on. Boom, just like that. Get it all over the place. Do not get this on anything else because it will leave almost like a silver stain. All right, so we're just gonna get this all on here, coat it all up. Back on it goes. We're gonna line up our holes. We're gonna stick our pin back in. And that is that. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side. That'll prevent rust for a long, long, long time. Same thing here, remove the pin, pull it out, slide the wheel off. Now's the best time to do it. Everything comes off super easy. It's when you're in the middle of a winter storm and something happens and something's rusted on and you're like, oh, son of a gun. You know, now what do I do? So we're just gonna coat this on real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Line up our holes, pin back in, lock it down, and you are good. What I actually want to get a quick look at now is the transmission on this thing. So again, we're going to use our 10mm bolt, or our socket, on our impact driver. We're going to take these off. There's 2 there. 2 down low. I want to see what it looks like, and if there's any spots that we should grease, we'll do just that. And there we go. Okay, this is your standard. I actually thought it was going to be different, but this is your standard setup for your drive system. You have your rubber edged wheel here, which is going to grab onto this friction disc, and it's going to spin. So when you lock down the drive, it presses down against this plate, and as this plate spins, it spins this shaft, spins that wheel, and spins your tires. Pretty straightforward. It lifts up and down every time you lift that handle. Pretty cool, pretty clean. That's exactly the way we want to keep it. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of grease and we're going to put it on this shaft right here, because what happens is this shaft tends to dry out, and then you have issues with this not sliding correctly. So this will definitely help out long term. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to slip some paper towel underneath this, because I don't want to get any grease on that friction disc. I want to keep it as clean as possible so that way everything slides and grabs tightly when it's supposed to. Okay, so we are going back to our good old friend marine grease, and I'm going to put a very, very thin layer of grease on here, and that's it. That's all I'm going to do, and that's all it'll probably need. And the thinner, the better. I don't want this on here thick at all, because then it could splatter as it's spinning. I'm just gonna put a real thin layer. Now, I've seen people use different kinds of grease. I have found success with this. No issues whatsoever. Now, in order to get the friction disc out of the way, all I gotta do is come up here, grab my handle, shift gears, and I can push it off to one side. It'll get out of the way. I can then get in there, get some grease underneath it, and we should be good. Okay, so next step, what we're gonna do is, this is gonna be another next level tip. I don't like the way this pulley sits right here. And if you look here, my cable comes up at an angle, but this pulley sits straight. What I'm concerned with over time is that this cable will slide off just from normal wear and tear, and it'll actually derail itself. So a simple fix to that will actually be just bending this down ever so slightly. We're gonna pitch it that way just a little bit, and that should take care of it. Now, if we look here at this one, the one for the drive system, this one is actually slightly angled. And if I go all the way over here to my Aaron's snowblower, this came this way. This one is already at an angle. It actually lines up perfectly with the path of this cable. So as we go back here, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a set of pliers here, and I'm just gonna bend it down . And that'll do. That actually looks a lot better. It didn't take much. It was a very, very slight bend. I maybe bent that, I don't know, just over 1/8 of an inch, but that's all it needed. So now here I am underneath the dashboard, and this is where my drive control is up here, and these are the cables to get the auger going. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna coat all this metal with WD-40. I'm gonna try to shoot some WD-40 down these cables as well. That'll help prevent any sticking down the road. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our good friend WD-40 and we're gonna shoot some of this down into our cable ends here, and that'll actually prevent any sticking down the road. Trouble's just finding the spot. That's it. That's one. That's two. I'm also going to Hit these springs. Same thing there. Another spring. There. We're also gonna hit this here. Our spring connect here. Spray that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next tip here, which I think is crucial, if we look here at our bushings, we have plastic on metal friction points there. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use some white lithium grease. You could probably use some other greases as well, something that's maybe just thick enough to kind of spin nicely on. And when this thing spins, what's gonna happen is it'll kind of work its way in. So if it leaves a little bit on the messy side, that's okay. I'm gonna let that kind of drip there, that's fine. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take some WD-40, our good old friend WD-40, and we're gonna spray this from top to bottom. We're gonna coat all the metal in here. All right, that'll help prevent snow from sticking to it. It'll also add to the longevity of your snowblower because it won't allow it to rust as easily. So we're gonna start from the top, work our way down. We'll do the sides, just like that. We'll do our auger blades. We're just gonna get it to the point where it's starting to drip. We're not gonna completely soak it and have it dripping off all over the place. That just makes a mess. That's really not necessary. And again, top to bottom, and then our sides. Again, hitting the augers too. Get that. Our gearbox back inside the chute. All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That will do. Another next level tip is what we're gonna do is take, again, our WD-40. We already sprayed inside the auger housing, but this time we're gonna spray inside of the chute. Now you might say, okay, well, JB, this thing is plastic. Well, what difference does that make? Well, yes, it is a smooth surface, but you have some metal points right there. You have these bolts. If there is some lubrication there, yes, it will come out faster. So we're gonna lube up this whole inside of the chute. We're gonna spray down inside. We're gonna hit it good. That's good right there. I'm gonna hit these bolts, loosen this up nice, okay. And then on top of that, there's this spring right here, which allows me to pivot this down and up. I'm actually going to coat this as well. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this belt cover off. I wanna see what the belts look like, even though they're brand new. I know they're new, but I wanna see how tight they are. I wanna see what condition they look like, all right, just before we kind of get rolling with this thing. So I'm gonna take my 10mm driver here, and we're gonna remove these two bolts here at the bottom. Boy, fight. Okay, so we got the belt cover off. I'm taking a look at our belts here. We got two belts, one for the wheels, one for the auger assembly to spin. And I don't see a belt tensioner on here. Usually there's like a slot, and this bolt can actually slide forward or back to tighten the tension on this belt. So it looks like the only way to tighten the tension on this belt when the time comes is to come around to the back. And here's our auger control, and all you gotta do is move this tube right here up or down on this threaded bolt. And that'll allow the tension to tighten up, and that'll actually increase your throwing distance. So as I pull down on this, we can see everything kind of grabs. That looks fairly tight. If I really had to get at it, I could tighten it down up by the handle, but I think I'm gonna let it be for now. So our belts look good. And at this point, I'm going to send this cover back into its spot. Well, everyone, there you go. Today you got to see the unboxing of a $499 snowblower on Amazon, the cheapest two-stage snowblower I could find. You got to see the unboxing and assembly, as well as some next level tips to make it last an incredibly long time. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very fun project. Thank you very much for tuning in to Garage Gear. Again, I'm JB. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. And we'll see you in the garage.